Good morning, LinkedIn. Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, YouTube. We are streaming live with you, myself, Carey Davis-Munro, and my wonderful colleague, Will Murtha. Morning, Will.
Morning. We can hear that wind whirling outside, Karen, today.
Yeah, my goodness me, we're suddenly really thrown into autumn, aren't we? So this is Wellbeing Wednesday. Will and I are here every single week to bring you a topic that we see coming up with our clients between us. We always decide on a topic from what we're seeing come up, what's in the air, what the energy is bringing us. And this week, again, we are bringing you a huge topic, which is really raising its head for lots and lots of different clients. And we can call it lots of different things. We've called it identity today because that's often the name or the word that people attach to this concept. Will is going to give us his own spin on that. And we're going to deep delve into why understanding our identity is so important, the downsides of not really having a clear identity, and certainly how and when it shows up. And we're going to give you some different examples with our clients. And then, as usual, we are going to explain and give you some tools, some tips about how, in terms of how you can go about finding yourself in a different way and understanding who you are, what makes you tick, what your authenticity is in terms of your true self. So I'm going to kick off with a couple of definitions. So identity means different things to different people. And as I said, that word is all encompassing. We don't necessarily like it, but it's the qualities, the beliefs, the personality traits and or expressions that characterize a person or a group. Or it's a fact of being or knowing who a person is. And in career theory, Taylor of 1989 says the view was identity being something that resides within the individual self as part of the innate being. Yeah. What drives us to authenticity? And it's really interesting, Will, isn't it? Because this word authenticity, when I've been researching this today, it comes up all the time with identity. When we're in stress, it's often because we don't feel authentic. Something is going on. We have this cognitive dissonance because we don't understand the true self and where we really should be at. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. It's a complex topic, isn't it? And I'm going to give a
Very.
Neanderthal answer to my sense of what is identity. 'Cause, I mean, there's a great, we could go on for like 2 hours on just like what identity means to different people because it's such a big topic. But I think for me, identity is just simply sense of self. So it's who do we think we are, or who do we think we're becoming? That's still identity. And who do we imagine that others think we are? So that's keeping it really sort of straight. So we've got this persona, coming back to your kind of statement there, we've got this persona, what we put out there, don't we? Our sense of identity to show the world, our shop window. And then we've got the internalized self-perception of who we imagine and feel that we are and how other people see us. And I think the problem with sense of identity, particularly in the workplace, which is where we're talking, mostly with our clients, their career, their craft, their kind of workplace, is that so many people are not showing up at their workplace or in their career with their true authentic self, are they? They're kind of, they're showing up with the persona that fits that model, fits that industry, fits that corporation they're working with. And so often they're not allowed, or they feel not capable of, or not confident enough to bring their full self to work. And as Bill Campbell always said, in his $1 Trillion Coach book, the degree that people can bring their true self to work without having to kind of make it up, false persona, they will experience more joy and be able to express their true authentic self.
Yeah, and I think it's really important because, again, we always have to bring context, don't we? The world is a mess right now. The world is a mess. We're disconnected from ourselves. We're disconnected from the world around us. And that's why we see more and more people, feeling a little bit lost and wanting to reevaluate their life, their direction. And I suppose the deepest goal when we talk about this topic is to really know and answer the question, who am I? And for me, and the way that we both coach with our clients, Bill, it's all about who am I in the moment? How am I responding to life moment by moment? And one of the biggest, the biggest reasons we wanted to do this today, I said I was listening to a brilliant podcast with Johnny Wilkinson, and he was talking about Rangan Chatterjee, and explaining that when we go and we show up in a place, and I think again we have a number of different identities: social, professional in our workplace, personal, definitely, and then the psychological. So we've got all these personas coming into one, and the psychological is our context of our values, our beliefs, and our self-concepts. But when we show up in a situation and we don't ask people, who are you? We say, what do you do? And we are not what we do. And Rangan Chatterjee was saying that he's going to stop saying, I'm a doctor, because what if one day he gets struck off? He's going to stop saying, I'm a father, because what if one day he wasn't and he didn't have children? And the problem is that when we give ourselves these labels and these titles, we put ourselves in a little box. And suddenly, if that box is deconstructed, as we know with our clients, then you're left flailing and asking, oh my goodness, who am I? Disconnected to yourself and disconnected to your world. And that can be a dangerous place to be, Will, can't it?
Well, it is, because we derive. I mean, let me state, we are not going anywhere near today gender identity. Just for anyone that might be waiting for that, that's a whole big minefield of down the rabbit hole, which is way beyond our conception or experience. But we're not naive enough to try and even tackle that. But from an identity point of view of who am I, if my career, my position, like how many people will you meet at a networking event? Not what do you value is one of the first questions. Not what do you bring to the world. What are your principles? What are your values? What's your philosophy? It's like, what do you do? And what you're looking for is, I'm a solicitor, I'm an accountant, I'm a digital marketer, I'm a coach, I'm a CEO, and straight away it doesn't really tell you underneath who you are, what you're about, what's really going on for you. It kind of puts this straight away, like for instance, if it's a solicitor, straight away you're thinking, right, okay, how do I approach a solicitor? Because as if they're some kind of different species. Well, they're not. It's just that happens to be the craft they've kind of got in the lane of. But I think what the problem is that we've got to get away, and there's been much written about this the last few years, isn't it, about bringing your true, authentic self, your sense of self, to the workplace, to your community, to your kind of groups, that you might be, to your sports team, whoever, your running group. Because if people can't see you for who you really are, it's almost like this false kind of veneer continually not only stays there but gets built, and people actually start building false perceptions about you. So it's almost like we start from the very wrong footing to begin with and build the wrong. It's like we build the building of our kind of perceptions for ourselves and others. We build it on the wrong footing, don't we? We get it off the wrong kind of out of the wrong kind of ground. And I think what we've got to do is start realizing, asking the big questions, like, if you took my career away, if you took my position away, what do I stand for? Who am I? What do I value? All the big questions which we're going to come to later in the, defining what your personal philosophy is.
Yeah. And I think that, it's really important to say that there are dangers to actually going with the flow and not asking. Most people don't ask these questions. We know that. Most people don't plan their lives or question who they are. We know that. It's a very small percentage, because we do have this, we come out of school and we attach ourselves to, I've got my GCSEs, or I'm getting my A levels. Not who am I? These aren't the questions that we focus on in school, that we passionately think we should be. But rooting our identity in a particular role, job, achievement even, or career, stops our vision of what we could be. and we create that attachment that, like, oh my goodness, cut that attachment, my security goes, my safety goes. And when we do, it can make us feel like a non-achiever. It can make us feel like an underachiever. If we're a new mum deciding I'm not going to go back to work, we can't always align our identity of where we were in the workplace with our identity of mum. So then it's like, oh my goodness, questioning ourselves, should I be doing this? And many of us bringing our sort of whole selves to a role and becoming immersed in that lose sight of the fact that actually we're carrying this out for somebody else, probably for the greater good of somebody else. So who am I in this? And I think one thing that is good out of the last few years, Will, that people are starting to question, this is me and this is work, this is my whole self. Yeah. Rather than this is work and this is life and this is me, because that's when we lose our identity, and our identity then becomes rooted in the past. And again, when we often talk to people and say, what do you do? They say, oh, well, I used to be this, or I used to do that, or I was a runner and then. And
highlight reel. Yeah, highlight reel.
Yeah, the highlight reel, exactly. So, there is a downside of not knowing, though, isn't there? What for you, Will, are some of, when we see this with clients, and I know you're going to give some examples, what's the downside of really not going through a process to work out what's important to you, who you are, what you value?
The thing is, we're not very good in this society at preparing people for change, are we? And we see this in our job all the time. Change, transition, transformation, whatever, shift, whatever words you want to use. We're not very good at, we tend to want a blanket term, don't we? We like say, oh, that woman there is just going through a midlife crisis. Oh, that man is just going through a midlife crisis. Midlife crisis is then, oh, they're probably depressed and they want tablets. We always throw this depression thing out there. A lot of clients that I coach, I'm going to give you some examples now, are not depressed. They're not lost. They're not kind of anxious. They're not just because of, a tablet's going to fix them. They're actually going through a transition process where who they thought they were, their job, footballer, travel head, entrepreneurial mother, successful influencer. These are all people that I'm coaching who are coming. Well, I'll give you an example. I'm coaching a footballer who's coming into retirement. I was writing it down this morning. I'm coaching a global travel head who started a business up 20 years ago from a bedroom, who's just kind of sold her business now. And who am I if I am not that 24/7 last 20 years kind of person? I'm coaching a CEO of a global corporation who is in his early 60s and just about to jump off and is terrified of change. I'm coaching an entrepreneurial mother whose twins have just gone off to uni, and I'm coaching an influencer married to an actor who the actor's just left them few weeks ago, and they're like, who am I if I'm not this relationship? I think, whether, the questions are, all these questions that are coming up in coaching are, who am I if I am not a professional footballer in the Premier, if I'm a rugby star, if I'm a globally recognized travel specialist, if I'm not a mother, if I'm not a wife or a husband, who am I? And I think all of this is all because we don't do transition very well, Carrie, do we?
No, we don't. And that comes back to, the point that you and I make all the time, the awareness about what you're going through, and knowing that actually, identity comes up, and lots of these subjects come up. Let's face it, when people are in a state of flux, or we need something to hang on to, or when you're going through difficult times. And when you're going through difficult times, you really need to know what the direction is that feels right for you. And it needs to feel in tune with who you are. And I always say, for me, identity is about being comfortable in your own skin. Yeah. Being happy with where you are. It's being able to put your head above the parapet, have it shot down and say, well, did I do, was I true to myself? Well, yeah, I was. Would I do it again? Yeah, I would. great. You know, it doesn't mean that we're not going to have conflict. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have difficult periods to navigate. It means that actually we're sure of who we are and what we stand for. And that gives us a huge comfort. And it is letting go different attachments. For me, it's about, you know, the benefits of knowing who you are is it gives you, as I said, this security and comfort. It sort of gives you a freedom. You know, when people get older, they talk their mind a bit more, and they say,
you talk about me and you. Are you talking about me and you?
Oh,
the world in general.
You know, people always say, you know, oh, my nan or whatever. She says it as it is. You've sort of got to have gone past the point where you have to impress people or you have to try to be something that you're not. So this is your core. This is your integrity. It's your true purpose. And I think it's about alignment with what you stand for. And the biggest thing is that in times of flux, in times of change, it helps you resolve the inner conflict. You know, you're talking about your clients. I've got another, I don't know how many. They come to coaching because they're going through difficult times. Usually they're going through change. But I've also got, like you, a number of very successful people who are deciding to change or leave a career, or have been very successful in the past and thinking, God, if I was an award-winning, you know, if I was an award-winning care home owner, if I was that then, what am I now? Because I haven't won that in the last 2 years. And the point is, you're still that person. You don't leave that behind just because you've decided to run your own business. So the benefits are that it helps us to manage our negative self-talk, which you and I talk about a lot. And it gives us more passion and motivation to be excited about the next stage of life. Yes, we've done that. Let's celebrate it. Let's reward ourselves. And when we're centered in our own skin, we live much more deeply connected to others. So we have much more meaningful relationships. There's much more a lack of confusion. And my goodness, do we need that right now, Will, in the context of what's happening? And more connected to self and then to other people, don't we?
I mean, we're going through probably one of the biggest shifts of humanity from a point of view of, you know, non-environment, non-kind of, you know, change of the planet. As far as human beings go, there's never been 8.5 billion souls on the planet before, and we're going through, you know, the pandemic and everything that kind of engineered is forced people to look at their lives, to reevaluate their lives. And who am I if I'm not working in a shop, you know, go with my life going nowhere? Who am I if I'm not doing that job that doesn't fulfill me and give me passion and purpose anymore? You know, I'll give an example. Yesterday, me and my wife went, you know, very rare for me, once a year, I went shopping, clothes shopping yesterday, which is a once in a year thing for me. And that's it.
I was wondering when you're going to change that jumper, Will.
And I got to a point where every shop we went through, they were struggling for staff. Like literally every shop they were struggling for. And, you know, we talk about this kind of million people in Britain alone. Where have they gone? Where have the workers gone? This is what people are asking. And actually, when you start to dig deep, because that's what we do, counselors, coaches, you know, we dig deep to try and get the answers, because we know you've got to get the understanding first before you can shift and change. So, you know, I'm trying to understand the problem. And the problem seems to be when you're talking to people in shops is that, you know, this kind of life is going nowhere now. You know, that cafe job, it's not really going anywhere. I want to develop more. I want to travel more. I want to learn more. And I think what we're seeing is the biggest, coming back to context of where we are right now, we're seeing the biggest mass migration, not of people moving places externally, but of people changing inside. That is, you know, there's a mass migration going of the soul, of the heart, of the spirit. And I think it's rarely talked about, other than in our circles of personal development and counselling. We know from the context of when we would be coaching people 5 years ago, 10 years ago, further back than that, you know, we kind of have got a grip on where people are. And most of the people we've coached in the past have either been for high performance habits at one end of the scale, or for helping them go through change and transition points and junctions at the other. And I think there's a third force that's rapidly coming in since the pandemic, which you are seeing, Carrie, and I'm seeing, is that we're now coaching people to find themselves and to understand who they are, where they're going, what lights them up, what's their passion, what's their purpose, what's their why. That kind of was only there on the edge of coaching a few years ago. Now it's front and center. Now it's at the heartbeat of everyone's life. And I think what we've got to understand is that, for eons, up until the last several hundred years, for eons, since humans have been here, we've had this rites of passage, which we're used to. If you look at indigenous tribes, they're used to a rites of passage where you move from one season or one chapter of your life up to the next. And we've kind of, in modern life, I say modern life for the last few hundred years, we've kind of forgotten and left it behind that the importance of the passage of rites, the rites, I get it the right way, right? The rites of passage. So we've got to understand that we're not sometimes depressed, we're not anxious, we're not insecure and uncertain. We're actually just transforming from that old sense of self, caterpillar feels like it's dying, up to the butterfly, which is actually ready to become something new. But before that happens, there's a sense that the old part of myself I'm having to let go of is dying. Yes, it is dying to release the new part of you.
Yeah.
And it's not depression. It's not depression in most cases. It's a sense of you're kind of lost, but you're trying to hold on to the old when really that needs to be let go of.
Yeah. And, we come back to the emotions. The primary emotion here is fear.
Yeah.
Where will I be? What will people think of me?
Who will I be? Who will I be? Yeah.
So, when we come back to fear, this is why it becomes such a big issue for people and such a big obstacle when they're moving from phase to phase. It's that loss of who I am, and then these limiting beliefs that people hold around that. And I know for you and for me, it's one of the first things now, and one of the biggest areas that we work through with our clients, because almost how can you know where you're going? How can you resolve something if you don't understand the basis, the foundation from which you're working? So I know for both of it's a huge piece of work. And I think, it's when people say again, who am I? We look at what you've been doing and that doesn't tell us anything. But for me, it's, how do I respond to life moment by moment? And I read something fantastic that was talking about Martha Graham. Martha Graham was a dancer, and I studied dance as part of my university course. But she was amazing, and she used to talk about, as a dancer and as, feeling into the somatic body, keeping your channel open. And I suppose for us, that's it. It's not closing down your channel and saying, oh, well, I was I have a barrister. I was a barrister, but, where am I now? It's more, I'm in constant flow. What's coming in? Where am I moment by moment? Expanding. And again, Johnny Wilkinson actually talks about this. Instead of talking about growth and change, he says, I don't like all that. Let's just talk about expansion. Because I'm not, I've still got all that, but all I'm doing is expanding. And I thought, absolutely, yeah, that's who we are. We're expanding and deepening our sense of who we are. We're responding to challenges with presence. Yeah, not with our eyes shut and just doing it because that's why we've been doing things like that a long time, but resourcefulness, and certainly asking ourselves, does this feel right for me at difficult times? And another thing I loved, I heard someone describe it as viewing our life as a hero's journey with a call to action every time there's an unfurling event or something difficult to overtake. And absolutely, I think that we've talked about this before, through trauma, through crisis, through difficult times. That's when we come to know who we are. So Bill, I'm going to ask you, how do you work with clients to find out their sense of self?
So keeping it, because it's a lovely subject and we could talk all day for this, but really I'd start with the symptoms. So I will start with a client and say, okay, where let's write down where there is a sense of loss. So you've got context of what is happening inside of you, outside of you, around you, when things are flowing, you're in your lane and you're kind of getting on well. Okay, what do you feel you're losing at the moment? Where's the sense of loss? And the loss might be, that grief of kind of leaving something behind, because it's all about loss. If there's one thing that all those clients that we're talking about have in common, it's a sense of loss, isn't it? It's a grief. and you've got to let go of that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you know, I would talk to clients about symptoms of loss of energy, a loss of motivation, a loss of their mojo, a loss of desire, a loss of passion, a low self-esteem. You know, all of these are losses that someone might take from a very one-dimensional view and say, "Oh, you're depressed." No, you're not depressed sometimes. I get it that neurologically you might sometimes have that, you know, but in the majority of cases, you're not depressed. You're kind of just floundering because you're not quite sure to leave the other life behind and have the confidence and courage to move forward to the next bit. So, you know, journaling, coming back to the point of the actual practice, journal practice, you know, what I call personal philosophy, is where you get your journal and you start to reevaluate who you are. There's three components to change. Who am I? Where am I? And where am I going? Now, the problem we all make, and we've all been guilty, you've been guilty, I've been guilty here, is that too often we go straight into the action mode of going somewhere. Well, we try and move somewhere before we've even worked out who we are and where we are. And the where we are best bit to understand is you wouldn't, you know, if you're setting your sat nav and you're down in Devon to go up to Manchester, if you can't get a download of the sat nav of your placement where you start from, it will not give you a route moving forward.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we are the same. We are the same. We should not be setting our path for where we're going until we've found out who we are and where we are. You know, and the way I'll ask simple questions, just sort of kind of rounding this off, is I'll get them to write in their journal, you know, what do you value? What do you want in your life? Number one coaching question in the whole of the universe. What do you want? What do you want? So many people don't ask that. You know, what's important to you? What do you stand for? What do you tolerate? Or what are you not prepared to tolerate anymore? What's your non-negotiables? Which means what are you not prepared to give up? You know, what's your passion? What's your purpose? What do you love to do? What brings you joy? All of these questions, as you know, will start through your journal practice, starting you to get to know who you are, where you are.
Yeah, I love it. And all of those, plus, you know, I sometimes say to people, what did you used to enjoy that you don't do anymore? You know, what were 3 things you enjoyed as a teenager that perhaps you don't get a chance to do anymore? And also, and I coach a lot of women, you know, going through hard times. A lot of women haven't stopped for many years to think about what their needs are. Their carers, their givers, their family makers. Understanding our needs is really important to understanding our sense of self. And some of us go years without really understanding and bringing our needs to the forefront.
Or a lifetime.
Oh my goodness me, a lifetime. Yeah, we don't stop to think about these things. And a lovely question that I like is, in what ways am I drawn to expand? Yeah, what shines for me? And do I know, we do a lot of this, Will, don't we? But do I know my values through and through? Do I live them? Because then we know when we're in conflict with them. And a lovely one I often do with clients is to put down a bit of your story. What are you telling yourself? And then it's obviously easier for someone else to do this, but then I deconstruct it. And we can then see it again and understand a sense of self. But it's quite a good exercise to write it down, and certainly also recall 2 or 3 times when you felt life was totally in flow. That's how I do a value analysis. Will, we could go on forever on this topic, and you and I probably will when we come off. But you know, do you think we've given people the nuts and bolts to start to go away and to question where they are in that?
Yeah, because I think sometimes, you know, William Bridges, if for anyone, I would recommend William Bridges' book, Transitions, because, you know, this society, this modern, so-called modern society, because there's so much we're not very modern at, we've got caught up in this believing that we move from the old island life to the new island life with one leap. What we forget is that in between, all the science, all the psychology says, and this is what William Bridges addresses brilliantly in his book, is that you've got to be prepared to swim in that no man's, that no woman's land in the middle, which is doubt, confusion, uncertainty, identity crisis, you know, roots being pulled up, insecure, feel that you've got no center, you know, that time where you're starting to question all the whys in your life. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing kind of, you know, you're not depressed, although depression can come across as a symptom. What is actually happening is that you are going through a shift, and nobody has ever taught you how to do it.
Yeah. And you know what I always say to people, identity is often constructed by the narrative you're giving it at that point in time. So be aware of it. Everything we do is about a sense of awareness, isn't it? And
Yeah.
you know, being in the moment, keeping that channel open, being open to expansion, and realizing that it's not what you're doing, it's what you're being. Will, thank you so much as ever. You know, massive gold nuggets that you've brought to this morning. We will be back next week for another practical coach to coach with myself and Will. In the meantime, we'll have a fantastic week, and thank you as ever.
Have a good week. Take care.